We're all getting settled for today's event. Feel free to share in the chat where you're coming from, where you're joining us today. We're going to get started in just a few minutes.
Have caption.
It's 1:32, so I'm gonna get started with our accessibility features for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Michelle Rosado. I'm one of the Ability Tools Program Coordinators here at California Foundation for Independent Living Centers, and I'll be moderating today's event, the Do Network Voters' Choice Act Appreciation Roundtable. For audio description purposes, I'm a Latina woman in her 40s with fair skin and curly red hair. I'm wearing glasses and a brown shirt and a black cardigan. Behind me is a golden colored CFILC Zoom background. Now, please allow me to review some of our accessibility options for today's meeting. If you'd like to access captions today, you can do so by going to the meeting controls found on the bottom of your screen and select the CC icon titled Live Transcript. You can click the option Show Subtitle to gain access to captioning. You can use the Stream Text link, which I'll be dropping in the chat in a moment. Stream Text is a great option because you can change the font size, font color, or make the captioning full screen. Additionally, please take note that the chat has been enabled to communicate directly with our panelists today at this time. Questions can be entered in the Q&A, or you may also use the raise hand feature, which is also at the bottom of your screen. And one final gentle reminder to all our panelists today, please be sure to provide an audio description of yourselves when introducing yourself today. And with that, I thank you all so much for sitting through our housekeeping. And now I hand it off to today's CFILC statewide community organizer, Mr. Goldie House. Goldie, you're muted still. Sorry.
My apologies. Hello, my name is Goldie House. I am the statewide community organizer for the Do Network here at CFILC. I am a middle-aged Black male, light-skinned complexion, wearing black rim glasses with orange handles, clean shaven, braids going to the back, wearing a burgundy polo shirt. My background is light blue with a logo over my left shoulder, with the Do Network logo with a white background, and the CFILC logo over my right shoulder with the CFILC letters and outline of California in black with a white background. Thank you everyone today for joining us in this discussion and conversation surrounding the Voters' Choice Act. This idea came up because it's been since 2016 since SB 450 has came to fruition, and we've watched it grow in California. And at the same time, we're watching other states still struggle for these voting access and privileges brought upon by the Voters' Choice Act, SB 450 in 2016. So today, we brought together some professionals and some advocates and organizers to have and join in on this conversation about the access and the appreciation and the continuous growth that is possible through the Voters' Choice Act. And with that, I would like to pass it over to Gabriel from the Disability Rights California to give a brief little history on the Voters' Choice Act.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabe Taylor. I am the senior voting rights advocate for Disability Rights California. I am a middle-aged white man. I am sitting currently in my kitchen. I have sort of salt and pepper, more as salt than pepper these days, hair. But clean shaven, and I'm wearing a red t-shirt. So a little bit about the Voters' Choice Act. So it was an idea that came about. It was started as State Bill 450. And the idea behind it was to create more accessible voting options for people. And the vehicle for it was to create a way for more people to have more options to vote and more locations to vote, and also more days to vote. So the concept behind it was that instead of going to one particular voting location, like an assigned polling place, people had the option to go wherever was the closest voting location to them. So say if they were out running errands and they wanted to stop off and go vote after they had finished their errands, they were able to. So the idea is that it would give folks a total of 10 days prior to election day to be able to go vote at any location of their choosing. They also had different options to vote. So instead of just going in person, you could go in person to a voting location. You could vote from home using a vote by mail ballot that would be automatically sent to you. You also have the option to be able to use assistive technology through your own home computer to be able to download and fill out a ballot using accessibility equipment on your home computer, and then print it out and then mail it back in or drop it off at any of the ballot drop boxes that would be nearest to you. So the idea was just to create more convenience for people, to make the options wider. So they started with 5 test counties. And so they they called them the Voters' Choice Act counties. And so these were 5 counties that were selected to try this model out and see how it worked for voters. And it's now in over 15 counties statewide, excuse me, over 20 now, I think, 20 counties statewide. So more counties are starting to implement this Voters' Choice Act model. And again, the idea is to make the voting options more convenient and more accessible, because one of the requirements of the Voters' Choice Act is to have all in-person voting locations be accessible. So instead of looking in your voter information packet for the little handicap, the disability accessible symbol, the universal accessibility symbol along a location, the idea was to open it up so all voting locations are accessible. So, groups like us, we talk about all of the options available to you and where to go to get more information that would be helpful to you to get to sort of make all of your preparations ahead of time and ahead of schedule, and just be as informed as you possibly can before you go to vote. So I will turn it back over to Goldie now to introduce our next panelist. Yeah, you're still on mute, Goldie.
Gotta get used to that. Yeah, my apologies. Thank you, Gabe, for that information and your insight on the Voters' Choice Act and the work that you do in the area of the voters' voting access. Right now, I would like to transition into Maria Magana, who's an individual who is an advocate and from Central
Coast
C-
Center for Independent Living.
and they're going to discuss why voting for these individuals is important, why voting is important in certain branches, certain areas. Welcome, Maria. Thank you.
No, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Magana. I am the Systems Change Community Organizer at CECIL. That stands for Central Coast Center for Independent Living. I will describe myself as Latina. I was shared that I have fair skin with rosy cheeks. I have black glasses on. My hair is in a bun. I have a tan color sweater or cardigan with a forest green blouse with ruffles and earrings today. Welcome. Today, I would like to share a little bit more of why is it important for us to vote, especially in the upcoming year. And I'm going to be talking about the 3 branches of government. And it will seem like a reminder, and I hope it's a warm reminder to many of us, because I think the last time I remember the 3 branches of government was when I was in high school and I was trying to pass the exam, right? But it's very important to understand not only the 3 branches of government, but how it affects me as a voter and how I, as a voter, affect the 3 branches of government. To begin with, part of the objective in my mini session presentation is to understand the 3 branches of government that upholds the U.S. Constitution, to learn who they are and what it does, but also at the very end, the Voter Bill of Rights, what are my rights as a voter? What should I consider? And is this happening to me when I am about to vote? Or taking or going to some of the sections that Gabe just mentioned, what amplifies the different options I have as a voter. At the same time, we're going to provide you with very specific dates that I would like you to pencil or put it on your calendar, because it's going to be key dates for our upcoming election in 2024. Now, keep in mind, I represent an independent living center, which is an ILC. And many of the ILCs across the state, in which Mr. Talmadge represents, he is the hub. He is our lead state community organizer that assists all ILCs when it comes to systems change. Now, the one thing I want to talk about when we think of the Constitution, I'm going to do my best to express in visual aids, if you will, so you can imagine the imagery that I want to provide you. First, let's imagine that you have on the very top the title, the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, and within that, let's call that a tree. And it has 3 branches. The first branch, which is very strong, is the legislative branch. The second branch is the executive branch. And the last one is the judicial branch. And all of that, imagine that all of us are apples, berries, and cherries, all the different products that create the community. It could be children, youth, young adults, our aging community, people with abilities, disabilities, or LGBTQ, or our demographics that constitute the community that you live with or you live in. And I'm first going to talk about the legislative branch. The legislative branch has 2 additional branches within that. That is the Senate and the House of Representatives. Now, the Senate and the House of Representatives are very important to each and everyone, and I hope that we feel comfortable building a relationship with them. Why do I say this? Because when we think of the legislators, there are subsections within that, and I'm going to talk a little bit more of them in a few minutes. The second branch we talked about was the executive branch. The executive branch is created by the president. The president votes or decides who's going to be his right hand, best known as his vice president. And within that, the president decides who's going to be the cabinets, who are going to be with me when I start creating or executing laws into place. Now, if you were back in, no, I don't want to say middle school or high school or maybe your college years, you always voted for your president because he had your back, he or she or they had your same interest, and you were part of that team that's going to make things possible. All right. Now, with that, you have the last branch, the judicial branch. These are the individuals that interpret the law, the Constitution, and they limit the power of what one branch has with the other. Think of it as kind of like a leverage that's equal balance in power. It is the court system, whether it's at a city level, state level, or federal level, where it's responsible to interpret the law, that it's also passing the law that's written by the legislative branch, which is basically the House and the Representatives, and who is going to execute the law, which is our president. And this is why it's so important that these three branches work together. One is writing the law, one is executing the law, and the other one is making sure that there's a balance between both of these specific branches. Now, I mentioned to you that it's very important for us to understand these three branches. I will speak specifically in terms of not only as a general notion, but also as a local section of how it affects me where I reside in the Central Coast, which is Santa Cruz, San Benito, and Monterey County. When we think of the Senate House, we have two representatives for the state of California. And I'm guessing everybody's from the state of California. Within the state of California, there's a total of 100 senators, but each state has two representatives. In the state of California, we have Dianne Feinstein, who has publicly stated that she is not running for re-election. Then we have Alex Padilla. Alex Padilla, his term ends in 2029. Why? Because for the state, we have to have a U.S. senator in place, and their term is every 6 years. So one every 6 years is running for re-election, while one stands in as a representative for the state. And I know that we're asking if you have any questions or any concerns, please write it down in the Q&A section. Now, we have U.S. state representatives. Now we have the U.S. representatives, which is more congregate within your region that you reside in. Now, there are a total of 435 members. Each member is based on the district and the number of the population that resides within that. They have to be re-elected every 2 years. As an example, I reside in the Central Coast. Our representative is Mr. Jimmy Panetta. His term ends in 2025, which means in the next coming election, he will have to be re-elected back into the 19th district or congressional district for him to represent the community. And then with that, so now you have the Congress. Now we're going to go one step down. State senators. The state senators, there's a total of 40 senators for the state of California. They represent the upper branch of the state of California's legislature as well as the California State Assembly members. They form the legislative branch of California's state government, and they work alongside the governor of California. Why? Because they are the ones who are creating and establishing not only the budget, but they make sure to include the passing of bills. They create policy that really matters to the community, and they're setting state levels on how much money is spending. They're either raising or lowering state taxes, and they are voting and upholding override governmental vetoes. So they're the ones who are in place just in case there's a veto. Now, why is it important for us to understand who is our state senator? Because as an example, I reside on the Central Coast, and in that I live in District 14 and District 17. In District 14, I have Senator Ana Caballero. Her term ends in 2026. She will have to run for re-election. And in District 17, I have Senator John Laird, and his term ends in 2024. Now, U.S. senators, their term is only 4 years, and I'm raising my 4 fingers up in the air. So every 4 years, they have to be reelected into their seat as U.S. senators or state senators. Now, lastly, state assembly members. There's 80 total in the state, a voice directly for the community and the people. They're assigned to various committees to review bills according to the subject area, which also includes authorizing bills that support the interest of the community, and they represent your voice. This is the assembly members who you always want to have a close connection, because they will represent your personal interest, and this includes our community with disabilities. They are elected every 2 years. I'm raising 2 fingers up in the air. And as an example, for my area, both District 29, which is Robert Rivas, and District 30, Assembly Member Dawn Addis, both terms are ending in 2024, which means they have to run for re-election. Now, does it make sense for me to understand why it's so important for me to understand the legislative branch and who represents me at a state level, at a congressional level, as senators and assembly members? Give me a little thumbs up, a little 1 in the chat, so I can continue to the next branch. Okay, since hearing none, I will continue. So now we go into our questions can be entered in the Q&A. Wonderful, thank you very much. So I do have a very short clip. Now that I understand that there's the president, and then there's the judges and people who write bills into power, may I have access so I can showcase, or am I not able to show the voter choice, my Bill of Rights? I'm not quite sure. No, okay, great. Just wanted to double check. Now, because of 2024 being an election year, I'm going to provide a couple of tips, if I can call it a roadmap. How do I best prepare for next year when I get to choose to vote? Who am I going to vote? How is that going to look like? The first thing that I want to think about is know your voting rights. Do I know my voting rights? Is my county a county that is a voter choice act, a VCA county? Yay or nay? What are my options? Do I know my Bill of Rights? And I know that in the links, we're going to provide a couple of links that you can follow up so you can read up on that or find information. What are my voting options as well? Do I want to do mail by vote? Do I want to go do the ballot and just drop it off? Do I want to go to the polls? What feels much more comfortable for me based on my abilities and disabilities? Also, do I need to check my registration status? Has my address changed? Has any information changed since the last time I registered? As an example, maybe I was for a specific Democratic Party, and now I'm choosing to be different in this coming election. If any of that information has changed, you have to re-register once more. Second, what kind of support system do I have in my community? As an example, you can go to any ILCs in your county and have a support system so you're not doing it by yourself. Do you have to go? Maybe this is an option. You want to go to the voter registration county office, look at your different options, look at what resources are they providing, and maybe looking and have a pre-test of the voting machine so you feel much more comfortable the day that you choose to vote. And also, many counties have the League of Women Voters. As an example, I always use their at-a-glance booklet because it helps me to best understand how do I interpret the bills that are going to be voted on. Also, you can go to your local state of California government page on voting on the voter section. It has a slew of information that you can go through and find out what's the best options for me. And like I said, also, who are the representatives within my county? Maybe I'm familiar with it, maybe I'm not. And I know that we're putting these links in the chat for you to assist. Now that you know that you're registered, now that you have the resources available, now the question is, how do I get informed of how do I go about my bills? For example, if there's a bill, how do I vote for it? What does it mean if I vote in for or against the bill? Do I fully understand it? And if not, where can I go for this information? Now, keep in mind that this information could affect me at a federal level, at a state level, at a county level, and at a city level. So depending what's on the ballot, it's going to be affecting me at each level. Now, the key thing is that you're voting to make sure that it represents your best interest in mind. Okay? I'm putting my thumbs up to say, are we in agreement? Wonderful. The last thing I want to give you as your roadmap for the best and wonderful experience to vote. Know your candidates. Know who's going to be running up for election, like the examples that I provided, that I get to vote on who my assembly members are, who my my senator is, who my congressional representative is, and who is my U.S. state senators. I get to choose based on my personal interest, based on the work that they've done in the past. So what do they stand for? How do they support your interest? How do they represent the community with disabilities? How do they help with housing and all the different areas that affect your daily activities, activities of daily living? And finally, read up on previous work. Do you like how they express and they represent in the works that they've done in the committees that they've been part of? And if not, this is your voice to say, I need to say something totally different. So this is the roadmap for you to have the best experience next year when it comes to voting. Now, we do have very specific things, and I would like for you to write it down if you're able to. These are the presidential election deadlines. The first one, February 2024. This is the last day you have to register to vote for the primary presidential election. The primary presidential election is March 5th, and I'll repeat myself again. February 20th is the last day to register to vote for the presidential primary election. That date for the primary presidential election is March 5th. Election day or voting day will be from 7 a.m. all the way till like 8 p.m. in the evening. Now, keep in mind, the presidential primary election will constitute who will be at the final general election ballot in November. Okay, so we have the third date. I'm putting my third finger up in the air. November 5th, 2024 is the general vote for all available election official seats and bills, including who will be our U.S. president. So these 3 dates are very important: February 20th, March 5th, and November 5th. So if you registered in February 20th, you will be able to vote in March 5th, and you will be able to vote in November 5th. With that said, You can always look at, and I'm wondering if we could put the CFILC community organizer website where you can find your county, and then that will provide the local ILC community representatives that can also assist you with how can I go about my voting year in a very successful, easy, comfortable, and fun experience. More than anything, that you enjoy your process. Without further ado, that is my section on what are the three branches of government, how it affects me, and I affect the three branches as well. Thank you very much, and I'll forward it back to you, Talmadge or Goldie, for those who know you on a closer level. Thank you, and you're on mute.
Thank you, Maria. Appreciate the information. And we are going to move into our question section of this presentation. And I felt that it was very important to give a lead into why voting is important, because some individuals have no clue what the Voters' Choice Act is. Some individuals do not know that they can, their voice can help. If their county doesn't have a Voters' Choice Act, their voice can help identify the need for it in their counties by contacting their registrar's offices. I would like to begin with the questions. This is the questions part of our presentation, and I would like to introduce Rebecca to see if we can get the questions read. Are you able to do this, Rebecca?
Hold on,
Give me a couple of seconds.
okay, here I am. I'm using my voice up. Then I had to talk for me. Okay.
Afternoon. My name is Rebecca Donabed. I'm the community organizer at Resources for Independence Central Valley. I'm a white woman with red hair that is pulled back, black glasses, and white headphones over my head. I'm wearing a blue shirt. My background is red with the Do Network logo in blue and green lettering in the upper left-hand corner, and in the right-hand corner is an outline of California in black with CFILC written on the side going down in big black bold lettering going down in front. My pronouns are she and her.
Thank you, Rebecca. So with that introduction, we're going to go into our sets of questions. We have a set of 8 questions. And if anyone wants to, panelist wants to chime in first to answer the question. And if it gets quiet, we will pluck on people to get an answer. Let's go, Rebecca. Let's go with the first question, if you're ready.
Question 1. What are steps that advocates can take to initiate support into becoming a VCA county?
Can you hear that?
Go ahead, Keaton. Thank you.
Now that I figured out how to get myself off mute there. My name is Keaton Denland, the Butte County Clerk Recorder and Registrar of Voters. Male in my mid-30s with short dark hair. I guess that can be described as spiky. I have glasses. I'm sitting in a blue polo shirt in my office in front of a window. The question being, how can advocates, what steps can they take to initiate or support becoming a VCA county? I think the easiest thing is to contact your local registrar. Every county has an individual like me. Every county has its own unique set of needs and challenges too. All the counties are different, from the smallest to the largest being Los Angeles. Not every solution matches with all of them, but contact your local registrar, start that conversation, let them know what your needs are, what the needs of the community that you represent are, and maybe how those needs are being met and also not being met. It's good to have both that positive and negative feedback, so it can really be a productive conversation that you're having with them, as opposed to one that can sometimes come off as adversarial. But if you come to the table with ideas and suggestions, that's really a good way to get that conversation started.
Thank you, Keaton. Go ahead, Christine.
So, something that I had to do first, a description, sorry about that. So Christine Fitzgerald, community advocate, Silicon Valley Independent Living Center, she, her, hers. I am a middle-aged white woman with salt and pepper hair. And like has been noted, I'm going a little bit gray too, so more salt and pepper. My background is the SVILC logo, my center's logo, which is a butterfly, and the butterfly is in a very colorful rainbow of colors, and I'm wearing a teal t-shirt today. So something that I did when I first came on board with SVILC back in 2016 was I found out that we did not have a VAC, a Voters Accessibility Advisory Committee in our county. And I knew that we were going to have one sooner rather than later. So I contacted my registrar of voters. And I started the conversation, and I kept the conversation in the frontmost of my registrar's mind in order to make sure that it got going. And I'm very proud to say that we were able to get it going within about a year of my first contact, which I'm very pleased with. It's going quite well, and like so many other VAC committees around the state, we work to ensure that all aspects of voting are accessible, not only in person voting, situations, but also online. So I would like to mention that there are two major things to remember as you're looking to vote. There is a slight difference between a vote by mail and remote vote by mail. So vote by mail, anybody can do. Remote vote by mail is more specifically for people with disabilities and those in the military. This makes it possible for those of us who have disabilities to use our own equipment in our own homes. So we can check off the various boxes that we want to check off on the ballot. And we can then put that ballot into an envelope and send it off. It does not necessarily have to be dropped off at a vote center, but it can be dropped off either in the mail, in a vote, in a drop box for the registrar of voters, or at the registrar of voters itself, or taken to one of the many pop-up centers. And like so many others, we have the 10-day model where, 10 days out before the election, you can go to your vote center and vote that way. Do the remote vote by mail, or vote by mail, and as always, vote in person. Even if it's at curbside, we also make sure that curbside voting is very accessible as well.
Thank you, Christine. Go ahead, Gabe, on you.
Yeah, I was just going to add to sort of expand a little bit on Christine's point about the VACs. One thing that we've found is really helpful, because we work with a lot of counties who have, started those conversations about, could we even think about implementing this new way of voting? And, would we be able to meet all the requirements and everything? And one of the really great things is if you can kind of start making those connections for them, and be able to connect with community partners that you already are in touch with in those counties, and say, hey, the county elections office is thinking about the implementation of the Voters' Choice Act. One of the requirements is to hold these regular voting accessibility advisory committee meetings. would you be interested, or do you know others who might be interested in attending these meetings, because they are a requirement. And so, and that way you're already kind of showing them, okay, we're willing to work with you, and here's some other folks that we've already been in touch with that are willing to come on board and help out as well. So it takes a lot of the work and a little bit of the pressure off of them if you're already doing some of the networking for them. So.
Thank you very much, Gabe. And I would like to also say that you can also reach out to your local ILC center and connect with a systems change or an IL advocate, independent living advocate, to help you navigate to where your voters registrar's office is, to signing up to register to vote, and to obtain accessible materials, learn how to obtain accessible materials for voting. With no other answers to question 1, let's go ahead and move to question 2.
Okay.
Question 2. What are some reasons for other counties to implement the Voters' Choice Act that has not been implemented in California yet?
Yes, James.
Good afternoon. I'm James Coos, Fresno County Clerk, Registrar of Voters. I am a middle-aged, I wouldn't say how old, white male with short brown hair and a beard. And I'm sitting in my office right now, so it's a very messy background that I have. Fresno County is a VCA county, but we didn't join as part of the original group. We do have a representative or 2 floating around out there of the original group of VCA counties, but Fresno joined as the second group. So I can kind of comment on why we joined and why those reasons might apply to other counties in California as they consider, and maybe why some counties aren't looking at it or aren't moving towards it. The VCA at that time required a vote by mail ballot to be sent to everyone. That was not required universally. It is required universally now. So that's not a difference kind of between VCA and a polling place county now, but it was one there. And that delivery of a ballot to the voter, which then allows the voter to make the choice of how and when they want to vote, is a major part of our thinking of how to improve the voting experience for the voters. And that's a core part of the VCA, I think, for us. And that applies across the spectrum, whether it be voting by mail, whether it be voting in person, whether it be using the accessible devices, which the VCA required an expansion of the accessible devices at in-person voting locations. And the VCA also at that time required use of remote accessible vote by mail. That has also now been expanded to everyone. All counties do have to provide that resource now. So that's not something special to VCA, but it was one of the initial core parts of the VCA. So that voter accessibility issue of improving every voter's opportunity in choice of how they want to vote. It's in the name. Voters' Choice Act. There was some talk at the start about it being cheaper. It's not necessarily. Now, the flip side of that, there hasn't been a cheap election in the last cycle, the last 4 or 5 years. So it's very hard to say that. I know that we've got a question later on that kind of along those lines about turnout and other stuff. Things are very complicated the last 4 years to really say, is something less expensive, more expensive, better turnout, less turnout? We're getting there, we're getting numbers, but what we do know is that we're getting a better experience to the voters. We have heard one experience there from Andrea that she was getting a better experience at the vote center because we can spend more time with our workers. We do have fewer workers for most VCA counties, so we can spend more time with them, training them. And we have a pretty good return rate, which means that you kind of get that retention of information. It isn't necessarily better than in the past, but when you've got a smaller group and they're coming back again and again, that's a good thing.
Thank you, James. Yeah, that's a very informative answer. And the other, I would like to add on top of that, it can be really expensive because you have a lot of rural counties where you've got to pay to expand to reach them individuals, which can be a financial setback. Andrea, go ahead.
Webinar. Mute, currently unmuted.
Hi, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to unmute. Did you call on me?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to share a really quick story that kind of speaks to what the gentleman from Fresno was talking about. Several years, probably 15 years ago, because I've been using the accessible voting machines since I think 2004. They were available here. And about 15 years ago, I went to vote. My husband took me. The place was very close to where we lived. And we walk in, and of course, you tended to get the same people working at the polls, so they kind of knew me. And I always thought they sort of thought, oh gosh, there's that woman again. She's gonna get, And so they said, well, we have the machine, but it's broken, and your husband's with you, right? So he can help you. And I said, he could, but he's not going to. And I will sit here and wait until you get the machine fixed. My husband went home. He voted. Because he supported me. He went home. It took them about an hour and a half to get someone out there to fix the machine. All it needed was to be rebooted because there was some issue with the software, that enabled it to talk. Took him 5 minutes. No big deal. They could have done it, but they didn't know and they didn't really care. And I think the point is, they said to me, oh, but someone else can help you. Well, that did it for me. I was determined I was going to stick it out and say, no, they can't. This is my right. And I get to vote privately and you need to make it work. So, and that kind of experience, I don't think would happen now because they're just the level of training and awareness is so much better. I was very angry at their attitude. I just thought it was, it stunk. And you can say, oh, they're new. They didn't know better. They should have known better. That's part of their job. They agree to do this. That's just, so I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Andrea. May I ask, how am I saying your name right? Andrea or Andrea?
I'm not fussy. Anyways,
Okay.
fine.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I didn't get it butchered. All right. Thank you for sharing your story. Go ahead, Christine.
So another part to this equation is being able to review the machines beforehand. And we had the opportunity at SVILC to have the latest voting machine from last year, of course, but the last cycle, we had the chance to actually have the voting machines come to our office so that we could look at it, so we could test drive it, so we could make sure it was going to work for us in whatever fashion we needed. And the really interesting thing in my own experience is, like Andrea, I had the same kind of issue several cycles ago. Since I myself use text-to-speech output to hear what I'm doing, I need the ability to do that independently at the vote center, at my polling plate. Doesn't matter where I'm doing it. I need to be able to hear what I'm doing. So the first time that I did this with one of the older machines, of course, like Andrea, I had the same kind of issue where that particular machine wasn't working correctly, and I actually had to bring another machine from a different site over to me. And like Andrea, that took about an hour or so to do. But I stuck it out too, because for me, voting is incredibly important. Now, I have actually used the remote vote by mail process as well. And because I can see to some extent the issue of trying to put things into envelopes and things, that is not as difficult for me as it could be for others. So, and I do recognize that and want to honor that. So there is definitely room for improvement, and definitely one of the biggest improvements that could be made is to make it so that we can have our votes directly counted at that time, and not even have to worry about trying to put it into an envelope, find a mailbox, all of that jazz. Let's definitely look at that option for everybody, not just for one or two people, but for everybody. So yeah, so having the different options available to people, whatever county you're in, should be there.
Thank you very much, Christine. Before I call on Gabe, we have questions will be answered at the end if we have time. And if we run slow, we will back up and ask questions in between. Go ahead, Gabe.
I was just gonna add, I mean, the other thing about those demonstrations that are really, really helpful is especially if they're able to bring either a group to the county elections office, or have the county registrar and some of their staff come out to the organization or the group and meet with folks. It's really helpful because it also sort of breaks down that barrier that sometimes exists between county election staff and the community members. And a lot of times folks might feel, for whatever reason, a little bit intimidated about going to vote or connecting with, government officials of some type. And so it helps kind of make it a little bit more casual and less pressured and less intense of an experience. So it sort of warms people up to the idea of voting in a way that doesn't feel pressured, or may have the anxiety of trying to figure out how to get to a voting location on election day and be able to get home again, and be able to do all of that process safely and efficiently. So again, it's a really great opportunity. And it also gives folks the time and the opportunity to be able to ask questions about the different features that a voting machine may have, and have the time for somebody to be able to walk them through all of the different features and how each of them works. So again, just a plug for having more events and opportunities like that are really great. And Goldie, there was, I don't know if you saw, there was a question by Alex. He had a question, I guess, in the chat about something. So
That's what I was going to call on.
Yeah.
DJ Alex Reyes, would you like to pose your question, like a minute or so? All right. All right. Let's move to question 3. We'll come back to Alex Reyes.
Three. How do Californians and individuals with disabilities benefit from the implementation of the California Voters' Choice Act?
Yes, Christine.
So a really big thing that we need to all recognize is the fact that the more that we can vote for ourselves and have the ability to vote for ourselves, the more our voices are heard. I know that we often say your vote, your vote really counts, your voice really counts, and it really does. When you think of it as if you were looking at a jar of peanuts, every peanut in that jar counts to equal the entire jar. Taking one out, yeah, you take one out, but that means that there's one less in the jar. So if you put it in the jar, it makes it that much more, it strengthens the number of us that are out there actually participating. And if the disability community is to be fully in full participation in the community as citizens as we are, and recognized as such, whether we have a disability or not, we have to make that effort.
Would anybody else like to tackle how do Californians and individuals with disabilities benefit from the implementation of the California Voters' Choice Act? Right. James, go ahead.
I'd like to add in here, I shouldn't say obviously, but a major part of the Voters' Choice Act is an expansion of in-person accessibility, and at the time, expansion of that remote accessible vote by mail accessibility. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that's now been uniformly applied across the state. All counties do have RAVBM. Which one they use, that's a little different, but it's also pushing the vendors that provide those services to the counties to improve their services. As more counties request or need access to the RAVBM, as more counties expand their accessible equipment, we're seeing new equipment, improvements on the equipment. We're seeing pushes through the SOS of actually updates to the voting systems, specifically because of that equipment, to improve it based on feedback from use to try and make that improve. So I think a technical improvement is being forced upon the state. That has also fed over into other areas where we are seeing there is a push for what we call ballot cure. When a vote by mail ballot is sent in and there's an issue with the signature, we must verify the signature before that ballot can be accepted and counted. And maybe the signature is missing, or maybe it's a mismatch between what is the registrar has on record. And you're probably going to see within another year or two here where we're going to start allowing some electronic options, some real accessible electronic options for that cure. Now that's a kind of an implemental process. It's taking time to get you have the cure, and then cure is allowed by several different ways, but now we're going to be looking at more accessible means of doing that. So the overall voting process with VCA as a core portion of it is creating advancements in accessibility and kind of forcing that out on folks. So I think it's improving that access across the state.
So true. Thank you, James. And as James expressed, the signature part, we just had a bill went across that is requiring registrar's office to implement more ways to verify an ID via email, phone call, or message system, because many individuals and in a timely manner than it was being done prior. Go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, I just was going to say, I mean, one of the things, because of the fact that under the Voters' Choice Act, all in-person voting locations are required to be accessible. It's something that is baked into the preparation that every county who implements this new model has to think about and has to consider and has to plan for. And so without even really thinking about it, they're already sort of their awareness about what makes an accessible voting location is already in their minds. And so they're having to lump voters with disabilities into every conversation that they have about every single voting location that they have in their county. And so, our goal is, as advocates and, advocates for the disability community, is that people with disabilities are being thought about in everyday conversations. And now that's happening with Voters' Choice Act counties, because it's already part of all of the requirements that every county has to meet. So it does the job by just creating a step that counties have to go through to make sure things are, the voting options and the voting locations are accessible for people with different disabilities. So.
Thank you for that, Gabe. Rihanna, go ahead. Oh, hold on one second, Rihanna. So, Gabe, DJ Alex Reyes has a comment in the chat. I used to work for the Alameda County ROV as a poll worker, so we had a lot of problems with ADA gear. So it took them a while to cast their vote as a councilman. As a councilman of California's State Council of Developmental Disabilities, I find that unacceptable. It is unacceptable. You are so right, Alex.
Yeah, Goldie, I can just add a little bit on that. Alex, you are definitely right. It is a issue that comes up not just in Alameda County, but in other counties across the state. A lot of times it'll happen where on election day, or the several days leading up to election day, DRC, Disability Rights California, my organization, will get a phone call from a voter who said they went to go vote in person and the voting machine broke, and the folks that were there didn't know how to navigate the situation, and so they weren't able to vote accessibly. And so we DRC as an organization, we do a lot of work to have what we call our train the trainer sessions, where we go and we talk to a lot of the county election supervisors that are in charge of the training, that train all the poll workers or the vote center staff. And we work to kind of talk through ways to troubleshoot and things for them to kind of keep in mind when assisting voters with different disabilities. And so a lot of that has to do with making sure, reminding them to familiarize themselves with all of the accessibility features on the voting machines. Because a lot of the problems that come up are because they're trying to quickly help somebody, a voter who may need, the audio equipment set up, or may need to use the tactile keypad, and they don't know how to set that up for the voter. And so we kind of encourage them to familiarize themselves with that ahead of time. So not only are they able to help a voter, but they also feel comfortable navigating through all of the features themselves, and feel comfortable being able to navigate that and instruct somebody else how to do that. So it doesn't take as much time, and also hopefully, knock on wood, avoids any problems that may come up.
Thank you, James. I want to make a quick note. We have 20 minutes to the end of our webinar. I just want to be mindful of time and our response time, so everyone has a chance and we can get through our questions. Go ahead, Rihanna.
Thank you. In light of that, and I just realized I am starting my screen. And let me
I am a white woman. I guess I now qualify as middle-aged. That's kind of scary. With short, wavy blonde hair and blue eyes. And my background is have a virtual background that's a Disability Vote California background. It's gray and it has blue lettering. It says, imagine the power of imagine the power of the disability vote. And it has the Disability Vote California logo in the corner. Disability Vote California is a coalition of organizations that likes to get together and talk about the importance of voting. That's my little tiny pitch for that coalition. And I will go back to the question at hand, which is how do I benefit from the Voters' Choice Act? And I really appreciate the ability to go and vote, have that 10-day voting window to go in person to vote and make decisions. I also appreciate the fact that because of the pandemic, we've been getting our ballots mailed to us automatically ahead of time. That's taken away the one step of making sure that I'm registered as an absentee, which I find helpful. But I appreciate being able to go in person to the polling place on a Saturday to take my time to look through everything and vote in person. And I like going to the polling place when I have time so that I am visibly, representing the fact that I am voting, I am participating in the democratic process. So that's my appreciation for the Voter Choice Act. And I will
Thank you.
end my comment there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Donna, yes.
I have to unmute myself. I haven't been on. I just realized I do have my camera off. It's just faster. But I am Donna Linder, Stanislaus County Clerk Recorder Registrar of Voters, white female, I'll go with middle age, blonde hair. But I just wanted to mention the Voters' Choice Act really makes things a lot more accessible for our voters because now there's 3 accessibility machines at each location. So if you do have problems with one machine, there's always another one available. And like has been mentioned, without so many locations, you do have more time to be very specific with training. And for our county, we hire part-time employees to run our vote centers. So then you even have a more intense training with those people. And we really focus on making sure those accessible machines are available and offered and really just out there for the public. So I think that really benefits our community.
Thank you, Donna, for that response. And it is nice to be able to have more than one machine in a polling place, and hopefully the training of the staff becomes more aware with the multiple functions on them, so they don't get focused on just one type of disability using these machines. Let's go to question number 4.
Okay.
Question 4. What lessons have been learned since the implementation of the Voters' Choice Act from beginning to end? Please include pros and cons.
Eaton.
Hi, Keaton Denley again, Registrar of Voters for Butte County. Lessons learned, I think, with the implementation of the Voters' Choice Act for us was that voter behavior can be extremely dynamic, election to election. So really learning and being prepared for all outcomes and situations that may come up from an election administrator's perspective can be difficult. In our first 3 elections from the Voters' Choice Act, we set records for voter turnout in our county. I know that James had mentioned maybe there's other reasons for that besides just the Voters' Choice Act, but we had a very high turnout. One of them, we ended up with extremely long lines at our voter assistance centers despite our best efforts. The next election, we had more than 50% of our voters vote by mail. The election after that, we had more than 50% of our voters use a ballot drop box. So it was a constantly shifting area of focus for our voters as voter behavior changed over those times. So I think being prepared for everything is one big lesson that we learned. But we also did learn that it's possible to do more with less. We didn't need as much staffing as we thought we would need. But like was previously mentioned, I believe Donna mentioned it, that we can really spend time with fewer workers and make sure they are very well trained for all of those potentialities. And really focusing in on fewer, but also a quality of trainees that we're using for our voter assistance center workers. One of the other great things that's come out of our engagement with the community through the Voters' Choice Act, through our LAC and VAC committees, the language accessibility and voting accessibility committees, is building relationships with other county departments, community partners, local facilities that are accessible for us to use, and really being able to improve our outreach to not only inform us as to potential voter behavior and voter turnout, but to educate the public in the best ways to get the resources that are available, because they're available. It's just a matter of communicating that to people so that people are aware that they are. And sometimes that can become the biggest challenge.
Yes, sir, definitely can. Thank you, Keaton. Let's go, James.
James Goose, Fresno County again. Yeah, we've learned a lot of the same things that Keaton and I think a lot of the VCA counties they've had a chance to begin the process and have a few elections under the belt have learned that, yeah, every election is different, and it's true even with the VCA. And that's actually allowed us to start to shift to use those fewer resources, but to also really look at where we can use those resources best. So we have some vote centers in Fresno County that have 5 accessible devices and 30, 40 different voting booths ready to go, because that's where folks like to go in person. I still have 3 accessible voting devices at every vote center, but maybe I have a few fewer people at a vote center where only 100 people will show up on election day. And I have 10 workers available at a location that's going to have 500 or 600. And we can kind of balance that around and even shift on the fly, something we would never be able to do before because there was only a single election day before. We couldn't respond to changes in demand in that way. Being smaller also gives us a general flexibility. My staff can better respond to a vote center than they could to a dozen different polling places. And so we have that kind of flexibility there. I'm just, I really have to echo a lot of what Keaton said there, is that we're seeing a lot of that across.
Much appreciated, James. Christine.
There we go. So I'm going to add to this on the flip side. So we had the 2 gentlemen from the actual registrar, which is great, fantastic. I'd like to flip it over to the VAC. Definitely there's been a learning curve for us all. Not having been in a VAC ever before, we enacted that. Never having served on any kind of committee regarding voting. Certainly there is a learning curve as to what that means behind the scenes. So I understood it from the actual voter side of the equation. I understand, I go there, I sign in, I do my voting, and then I leave, right? I got that. I've been voting since I was 18. But looking at and learning about what it means behind scenes, what are the challenges that the registrar is going through, is equally important to really grasp. So one of the big things that we have all discovered in the back, both community member and the registrar, is that some of the challenges, for example, one of the biggest challenges came up not terribly long ago, where we had a site have a flood happen because a pipe burst. So you have to shift that site to somewhere else. Because we've been in contact and in discussion for a long time now, the registrar was able to quickly understand, okay, we can't just spin it over here at this site because it's close by. We can drag everything over and here we go. We have to make sure that whatever site we go to is accessible. And so they've gotten to the point, and knock wood, and they're doing fantastic work, is they have a small but mighty coterie of alternate sites that if they needed to shift you, they could, for whatever reason. You know, it's so important to be able to have that knowledge and skill behind the scene, but certainly, you know, understanding their difficulties within that office, within the actual registrar, all those challenges has really added that much more to the conversation. So, and one thing that I try to do as chair is to make sure that we understand and we keep this in the front of our minds, that, you know, they're working very hard every single day. And we're not trying to overburden them, but we are trying to make sure that the whole process is accessible from beginning to end.
We do want to make sure it is available and accessible from beginning to end. Donna, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. That was very nice of you to talk about the learning curve that you had on the back, because I want to echo that. As a department, we followed the code and did all the things we were supposed to, but having our lack and back, we have learned so many things that we could do better. And it just really, it feels good to try to do better every election to assist our voters.
Totally. So true. And especially as it was stated, you know, the elections are so sporadic. So you just got to be studied and prepared so you don't have to get ready. Let's Gabe, and then we're going to go to question 5 before we, you know.
Yeah, just wanted to sort of piggyback on other things that we've seen, is that the willingness and the availability of county election staff to start thinking outside the box more is happening more frequently these days because of creating more options. So they're automatically in that mode of thinking of like, okay, here's the situation with this particular voter. They need a ballot. We need to figure out how to get them a ballot. How can we do that? And so we've been able to literally day of be able to figure out ways to get a ballot to a voter and get them to be able to cast it successfully on election day. And so things like that are just happening more often because of all of these new options and new ways of doing things that counties are having to kind of keep in mind. And it's really been kind of inspiring to see it happen, and really great to see it happen. So
it's been really great to watch a lot of these. I believe it's 28 counties we have that are vax in California, and it's been good to watch a lot of these counties do this with some of them don't have a voting fund increase in these registrars' offices, and are very little staffed. Let's move on to question 5.
Okay.
Question 5. How do new voters learn about the process in their county and get involved?
I would like to call on Jessica.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Restra. I am a brown Latina woman with brown hair and brown eyes. I'm wearing a gray sweatshirt. With that in mind, how can people know, get involved, or know more about the process? I'll try to be very simple in saying before anything else, it is really important for folks to register to vote. That is essential for young people. There is a pre-registration to vote ahead of time. So if you are within the ages of 16 and 17, you can pre-register to vote. So between sophomore, junior year, you can start being able to do that as you prepare to turn 18 to be able to start voting. So that already helps you get an understanding on like knowing which political party you would want to be of, like being able to know a little bit more about the process, etc. So that is something that is really cool. Other things in how to be able to prepare and like know ideas. We do have, as mentioned, a lot of IOCs within every single county, within California. So it would be really cool being able to connect directly with their youth programs to be able to see what they are doing, how they are interacting, and how to bring in the youth voice and the youth vote. It is really important to make sure that we have a lot of disabled youth be part of this electoral process, especially these presidential elections, because it is going to be a very crucial year. And we need to make sure that we're getting as many young people out there and voting. Beyond that, we do have a lot of individual resources that will be shared later today, where there's a lot of folks like such as Rev Up and a few other different organizations who are doing work on a national level to make sure that we kind of understand the process and know the resources from kind of like know your rights type things towards like who to get in contact with, etc. Like right now, we are genuinely working on creating kind of a document that it has a lot of these different features and a lot of these different things that folks can be able to understand to be able to get to know that. And everyone will have access to it. We're kind of in the finalized version, so it's coming out within the next few weeks. So yeah, we will share that with y'all so like y'all can know more about your rights, how to get your elected officials to put a big emphasis upon disability rights, and just how we could be able to get our youth out there and voting, because our youth are so very much important and we need to make sure that their voices are included in the process. So yes, thank you, Goldie.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate that. Well, quick, Christine.
Right, okay, thank you, Goldie. So really quickly, another way, beyond what has already been mentioned, fantastic coverage, but I'm also gonna add that every independent living center has forms that we have folks fill out, new consumers fill out, looking at, are you a registered voter? So that's step one. But another step that can be taken with the independent living center is you can work with the advocate to better understand what bills are about. Because we know a lot of bills are very confusing. They're practically written in legalese, and some areas don't have League of Women's Voters that puts out a voter's guide that breaks things down. But certainly the advocate at the local independent living center can assist you in going over the different bills and such that are being offered. Every independent living center is required to remain neutral, so we're not going to be able to talk to you about who is good, bad, or indifferent, but we can talk to you about the different initiatives that are on the ballot.
Yes, Christine, and I would like to, the individuals were talking about creating forms, and this form is basically simplified language because bills and legislation and people have processing situations. So advocates are getting together to create voting information in a simplified language so it's easy to understand, easy to process, and easier to prepare questions. And with that said, it is 2:59. We do have a hard stop at 3 o'clock. I do appreciate the panel for coming in and having this discussion. It's a big discussion. We didn't get through all the questions, but I do appreciate the participation, the answers, and hopefully individuals can understand more about, the Voters' Choice Act and how they can better get involved in their counties. Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed afternoon. Bye.